I remember talking about buying property in your SMSF or super accounts a couple of years ago, and at the time nobody really knew what was happening. Now it seems like everyone wants to buy property in their SMSF. In this video I'm going to share with you exactly why people are wanting to buy property in their super, is it a good idea, and what do the numbers actually suggest. In this video I'm also going to share with you a real client experience of what they bought, what the numbers look like, and why it may supercharge your portfolio. If you're interested in what my thoughts are, definitely keep watching. Hey guys, my name's Ravi and welcome back to Personal Finance with Ravi Sharma. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button because I talk about real estate, personal development, and all things financial freedom. Now, if you are interested in watching this content or listening on the go, it is completely ad-free, not only on YouTube, but also on Spotify. So definitely go on to any platform that you choose and watch it there. So what is an SMSF? SMSF, it's a self-managed super fund. What you most likely have at the moment is just a normal super fund. It's a traditional super fund that's managed by someone else. So if you think about this, it's like having a bank account that your employer is contributing towards in the background, and it's being managed by the bank to invest in things, whether it's aggressive or whether you want something that's less aggressive. A self-managed super fund is exactly that. You manage it yourself. Not only do you still have the same options of investing into something aggressive when it comes to shares, you now have the option to invest into property. Now, there are some rules around how you can invest in SMSFs and how to set it up properly. If you need help, contact me. I'll leave my email in the description box below, and I can point you in the right direction with a savvy accountant that can actually get this done with speed. Now, let's dive into some numbers here in Australia and what does it actually look like? How many people are actually doing this and why are they doing it? So this is as of 4th of July 2024, 1.1 million members with $869 billion in super. Well, sounds good. Self-managed super funds, SMSFs in Australia, are privately run super funds for between 1 and 6 members who must also be trustees of their fund. According to the ATO, 68% of SMSFs had 2 members in June 22, typically a married couple, followed by 25% with just a single member. Those with 3 or 4 members made up just 7% of funds, while the maximum number of members was increased from 4 to 6 from 1st July 21, and by June 22, less than 0.2% of funds had 5 or 6 members, indicating there may not have been as much pent-up demand before, but it's still early days. Now, if you didn't know, right now your super fund is probably sitting in your own name and then you have your partner's name. In a self-managed super fund, you can have both of your super balances come together. Now, if you think about it, one person has 100K, the other person has 100K, now you have 200, and that allows you to get into property. Whereas individually, you can't. And that's where you have so much flexibility around these sort of things. Now, again, I'm not going to give you any sort of tax advice or financial advice when it comes to this. You've got to make your own decisions. And you've got to think about it logically about your strategy and what this can actually do for you. If it makes sense and you actually want to buy property in your SMSF, then contact an accountant and they would be able to set it up for you. How many self-managed super funds are there? The latest available ATO figures indicate there were 594,334 SMSFs in Australia in June 23, up 2.5%. This continued the steady growth of the sector despite ongoing market uncertainty. As you can see from the table below, the number of new funds established decreased slightly, as did wind-ups in the year to June 22, resulting in the strongest increase in net establishments in many years. And a large reason as to why this is happening is because, let's say your borrowing capacity is maxed in your personal name and you can't buy more real estate, people have often gone to the SMSF because it's a different set of rules. The same borrowing capacity doesn't apply in your SMSF, so you could be in your personal name maxed out, but in your SMSF you still have borrowing allowing you to buy more real estate. So we can see from 2018 all the way up to 2023 and the net establishments number. It was going down in 2018 and now it's increasing by 14,000. This is as of 2023. I would go on to say 12 months, 18 months later, that number is closer to maybe 20 to 25,000 a year. Now, what is the average and median SMSF balance? The average account balance of individual SMSF members and their fund fell in the year to June 22 due to the market fall in early 22 and subsequent ongoing volatility. The average balance is skewed by a relatively small percentage of very high balance funds, and the fall may indicate wealthier individuals seeking alternative investment vehicles as they retire and exceed their transfer balance cap. So if we look at this, we can see the average assets per member and how that number has increased from 652 all the way up to 780. I also don't like how this website does it because it should be the lowest dates here, but it's doing the opposite. It was the same in this graph as well. It should be here 2018 and end up in 2023 because that's how our minds read these things. But what we can see is the median assets per member has gone from 378,000 to 467. The average assets per SMSF have risen from 1.2 million to 1.4 million, and the median assets per SMSF has gone from 672,000 to 826. So what do these numbers actually look like when it comes to the asset balance and the percentage of SMSFs? So if you look at it, 0 to 50,000 only accounts at 5.4%, then 50 to 100K is less than at 2.3%, and then 100 to 200 is 5.6%. Now the bulk of the numbers are here. Between 200 and 500 is 19.6%, 500K to a million is 25%, and then 1 million to 2 million is 21%, and 2 to 5 million is 15.5%. You also then have almost 4% at between 5 and 10 million, and more than 50 million is less than 0.1%. These numbers are absolutely wild, but if you actually think about the compounding nature of what you can do now and how if you were to buy property and you did it over the period of 30 years, these numbers don't seem so ridiculous. Now, what type of people are actually setting up SMSFs? The controller, the most common type of SMSF member, they want to have a high degree of control over the management of their fund and investment decision making. The self-directed investor, this type is less likely to seek professional advice in managing their fund or making investment decisions than a controller. The coach seekers take a moderately active role in managing their SMSF and making investment decisions. And then the outsourcer. This type of SMSF member prefers to almost totally outsource day-to-day admin of their fund and investment decision-making to professionals that they hire. And a large portion, and I would say 99.9% of the people that come to us are the outsourcer. They basically say, look, I have enough to manage in my everyday day-to-day life. I don't want to sit there and make the wrong decision with my SMSF when it comes to the type of property I want to buy. I know I want to buy property, but I just don't know how to execute well. That's why they contact the buyer's agency, Search Property. If you need that sort of help, search it up on Google, search property, Ravi Sharma, it'll come up. And we help Australians every single day when it comes to SMSFs, growing their portfolio to just one property all the way up to 4 or 5 properties. So if you need the help, I'll leave a link in the description below as well for a free call. Now, as of 30th of June, 2021, let's look at where the money is being spent. How are people spending their SMSF? 16.9% are leaving it in cash or term deposits. So they don't even want to be in the market. They're saying, look, the market's too volatile. I'm just going to leave it in cash. And I think this makes a lot more sense when you've got a larger portfolio. So imagine having, say, $1 million in cash. If you just put that at 5% at the bank, you're making $50,000 as a retiree. That's a lot of money if your house is paid off. So they don't want to take that risk. You then have unlisted trusts. Interesting. Then you have non-residential real property. So about almost 9% will go into things like commercial property. Then other assets is at 8%, limited resource borrowing arrangements at 6%, listed trusts 6.5%. Then residential property is at 4.9%, and then 30% are in shares. So a lot of people don't know this, but you can still have a diversified portfolio when you go and put it into an SMSF. It's not like you just have to come out and say, okay, I'm going to put it all into the one thing. You still have the choice. You in fact have more choice by doing it yourself. And what's interesting is that number is 5% in 2021. I would go on to say it's probably closer to about 7 or 8%. And the reason why commercial property is in there is because of the net cash flow. Now, if you guys want a deep dive between commercial property and residential real estate and which one is better, what the pros and cons look like, then definitely leave me a comment down below saying commercial ? And I'll make that video for you guys as well. All right, so what I want to do is share with you my whiteboard and look at some numbers from a real client. I'm not going to use their real names, but it should give you an idea as to what the possibilities look like when you're leveraging money. With this couple here, their name is Kevin and Anna, but for the purpose of this, their name is actually not Kevin and Anna. And what they wanted to do was they wanted to supercharge their portfolio in SMSFs. And they said, look, Ravi, I want to buy property here. I know what the risks will look like because I have to take out a loan, but we're comfortable with that. So they're in their 40s and they asked, how do we go about buying property in SMSFs? So the rules are a little different. Now, the first one you'll notice is that there's a 20% deposit. So you can't just go out there and say, I'm going to get a 5% or a 10% deposit like you would in normal residential real estate. And you cannot use the equity from one property to go and purchase other property. I'm going to leave a video up here for anyone that does have equity to purchase multiple properties in their personal name and how they're able to scale up their portfolio without having to put money down every time. So using equity as deposits rather than your own cash, definitely go check out that one. But in your SMSF, you can't do that. But if you stay till the end of this video, I'm going to share with you exactly how you can still supercharge your portfolio, not having to put more money down anyway. Now in this case, they went ahead and they purchased a 500K property. It was 20% deposit, making it 100K. With the stamp duty plus the fees, it worked out to be closer to about 30K. And that would mean they would need 130,000 to execute on this. Now they may need a little bit more as well because you probably want some sort of emergency fund in there as well. So in this case, their balance was 300K and they went out and bought 2 properties. Now the real numbers are the first property was 502,000, the next property was 455,000. So the asset value here was $957,000 as an asset value. That left them $50,000 in cash. They decided to keep it in complete cash in case there were maintenance things that they needed to do for the property. They weren't really interested in shares because they were already investing into ETFs outside of their super. So they were comfortable with that. Now, at 5% growth, conservatively in 10 years, the portfolio should be worth $1.558 million. And by the time they retire, which is when they can access this money, it should be worth about $2.5 million. Now, at that point as well, the properties will be completely paid off. The strategy was that the rent plus the employer contributions would allow them to pay off that home loan completely. And that would be, in this case, without having to put extra money from their own pockets. So it was just simply what the employer was paying plus the rent that goes in. By the time they're 60, they'd have net assets worth $2.5 million. By the time they turn 60, the 2 assets are worth about $2.5 million. The rent, even at 4% rental yield, would mean $101,000. Now for them, we're also helping them with buying property outside of their super. So we figured out a way that they can get their principal place of residence completely paid off by the time they turn 60. They're also gonna have a couple of other investment properties, but just with this scenario, having $100,000 come through at the age of 60, plus their house is paid off, that's almost $2,000 every single week that they're gonna have to be able to live a really lavish life. What's more important is the asset continues to grow rather than you having to take out the 100K from your principal. Very powerful stuff. Now this is a 3x on the best case scenario that they would have received. So if they had continued going down the path they would make about $30,000 a year, but in this case, they're making about $100,000 a year. Now, a couple of things that you need to keep note of is that you need to understand the ongoing costs. You need to know that the rents are gonna grow and you need capital growth. If you don't have these things, it means you bought in the wrong areas. You didn't use the right skills and the right data to make that decision. That's why I offer the service, because people are out there making dumb decisions. And although you're having to pay a fee, it's very small compared to the outcomes that you can actually get. Now, here's the bonus. This is the strategy that works, and we're doing it currently with another client because they're in this position where they have the higher growth properties. Now they're in their 50s and they're wanting to know what their options look like. So what you'll be able to do is, although you can't use equity from one property to purchase another property as a deposit, the solution is that after 10 years, because we're purchasing in the right locations, those 2 properties would be worth about $1.5 million. The debt would still be about $800K and the equity about $750,000. So what they're gonna do is you could sell both properties, and after taxes, they'll be left with about $600K. Now that's not gonna get them to financial freedom. Although that number is so much higher, that already in 10 years means they've 2x'd their entire portfolio in their super, which would definitely not have been possible without actually using leverage. But they can then use the 600K and go across into 4 different properties. In this case, if they purchase 4 properties at 500K each, they would now have a portfolio worth $2 million and yielding at 5% 100K. Now, what's important is that they've now taken on more debt, but they've diversified their risk. They've also purchased more assets. So there's different values at different places. Now, after 10 years, at 5% growth, it would now be worth $3.2 million, and a 4% yield would mean $128,000 in rental income. So what they've done is, before they had 2 properties, they would get 101K and the valuation would be 2.5 million. The after for this case would be $128,000 a year and the value would be $3.2 million. They could go on to repeat this. They could also sell and save the cash in a bank. They could also sell and diversify, so sell to and pay off the principal place of residence if they decided to do that, but it gives them more choice. The other thing is they would still carry some level of debt in the option 2, which is purchasing more assets, but net, they could still go ahead and at the age of 60, sell some of those properties and they would be further ahead. This is just the power of finding the right properties, going out there, having the right strategy and knowing who to execute with. Because you can see what the flip side looks like. If you don't do it so well, you get stuck on one property, it goes backwards, you've now lost the money in super. That's why if you're going to go down this path, it is high risk. You need to be able to mitigate those risks by having the right expertise around you. So if you need any of that help, book in a call. Would love to help you scale up your portfolio. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, smash that like button. And if you're new here, subscribe or follow the channel on Spotify and YouTube. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks, guys.